Oh, I'm on my way, I know I am, somewhere not so far from here.
By the mid-1980s, pop star Cat Stevens had vanished into the shadows. Now, Yusuf Islam emerged into the light. He worked tirelessly for Muslim causes around the world and was compelled to serve as a spokesman for the Islamic community. Yet the media viewed his every move with suspicion. Then in February 1989, he was drawn into a controversy which for a time would eclipse a decade of good deeds. When British author Salman Rushdie was about to publish his novel, The Satanic Verses, it caused an outrage in Muslim communities around the world. They alleged that the author committed blasphemy by insulting God and his prophets.
I was contacted by someone saying there's a book coming out and will you join a petition to write to the publishers? And that's what we did, you know, it was very simple.
The petition to stop the book's distribution failed. Then the already volatile situation was ignited. Iran's Islamic leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, issued a judgment or a fatwa calling for the death of Salman Rushdie.
I found myself somehow being pushed up to the front of the vanguard of this kind of struggle and being asked to comment.
Because our aim is an ideal society. I mean, if you take...
Within days of the controversy erupting, Yusuf Islam found himself in the hot seat, pressed to explain the Quran's position on blasphemy. Yusuf, a recent convert, said, like the Bible, the Quran states that blasphemy is a capital offense.
I'd done enough studying at that point to be able to actually sort of more or less quote, you know, chapter and verse and the commentary of religious texts based on the Quran, of which there are different opinions. But I said, well, yeah, it says this. Next day, you know, the headline read, "Cat says kill Rushdie." You know, and I was horrified.
The newspapers had it wrong. He never endorsed the fatwa on Rushdie's life.
I was simply a new Muslim who had stated something which I thought was quite simple. And if you were to ask a Bible student, you know, what the Ten Commandments were, you would expect him to read that and you wouldn't blame him for that.
Appalled by the media's distortion of his comments, Yusuf immediately released a statement to clarify his position. It read, "That is not to say I am encouraging people to break the law or take it into their own hands. Far from it." It went on to say, "Under Islamic law, Muslims are bound to keep within the limits of the law of the country in which they live, providing that it does not restrict the freedom to worship and serve God and fulfill their basic religious duties."
I think I was a little bit naive many times. Perhaps I should have thought a little bit more before answering. But then again, you know, I was expecting that people had good intentions, but it's not like that.
In the end, few in the media paid attention to his attempts to set the record straight.
There are no words I can use, because the meaning still leaves for you to choose.
Yusuf Islam's reputation was seriously tarnished by the controversy. Some shops advised their customers to stop buying Cat Stevens records, and one American DJ even destroyed them.
Driving a steamroller over my records, and I thought, a strange thing to do, you know. The most unfortunate thing about this whole episode was, I suppose, the way in which it separated me from my fans and from those people who had appreciated my words and my life and my journey.
He had to pay the price. From suddenly being the star, he had to become the anti-star. As a result, he had to be the sort of reviled one almost. It just had to happen.
When I realized what was happening, I felt there was a time to get proactive. It became obvious that we can't just let others talk about what we believe.
Now, convinced he had to do something to promote a greater understanding of his faith, Yusuf decided to record once more.
His life ever shines as a symbol of light and guidance for all time and for all people.
In 1995, he released The Life of the Last Prophet, a CD of song and spoken word. The record told the story of God's messenger, Muhammad.
Muhammadur Rasulullah.
I wanted someone who was coming from a Western background, who knew very little or nothing about this man, about this religion, to tell them in 1 hour what it's all about.
The experience was a turning point for Yusuf. Now he realized music still had a purpose. It could educate. It could serve his faith.
Oh, the white moon rose over us from the valley of Wada.
I think he was recognizing he'd been a bit too stiff, a bit too rigid in the past, and that he really had to take a much more fluid position. It's not all black and white. In many cases, music can have many, many positive effects. It can be very beautiful, it can be therapeutic, it can raise people's spirits.
And we owe it to show gratefulness where the call is to Allah.
If Yusuf had any question that music could again play an important role in his life, he would find his answer under the harshest of circumstances.
Fierce fighting has erupted in Bosnia. There is said to be an enormous number of casualties in Sarajevo.
Sarajevo is confused and catastrophic.
In the early 90s, the world woke up, slowly and belatedly, to the brutal conflict that was being waged in the former Yugoslavia. The battle lines were drawn along ethnic and religious lines.
It's unimaginable to see how some human beings behave, with blind prejudice. Here it was, in the middle of Europe, the end of the 20th century, another genocide taking place.
Oh, they've killed all the little ones while their faces still smiled. There was nothing to help them on the day that they died. No longer to laugh, no longer to be a child.
Yusuf Islam began a humanitarian project to support the victims of the war by sending food and medical supplies. That aid was used by people like Dr. Irfan Ljubijankić. Dr. Ljubijankić, who also served as Bosnia's foreign minister, traveled to England on a diplomatic mission in 1995. While in London, he visited Yusuf to thank him for his efforts.
I was really honored that he, as a doctor, as a symbol in a way of the defiance and the strength of the Bosnian nation, how he as a doctor had worked selflessly in the basement of Sarajevo, helping put together broken limbs and shot off, arms and legs. And this man, to me, was a brave man.
Before he returned to Sarajevo, Dr. Ljubijankić gave Yusuf Islam a gift, a tape of a song he'd written about the enduring spirit of the Bosnian people. Just 3 months later, Yusuf received horrible news. Dr. Ljubijankić was killed when his helicopter was shot out of the sky.
And I remember walking into his office the day he'd heard this news, and he looked, palpably shocked.
That was the moment when I realized that the song he left me was something that I had to now do something with.
I have no cannons at war, but I have faith in God and love.
The song was called I Have No Cannons That Roar and became the title track of an album of contemporary and traditional Bosnian music produced and financed by Yusuf Islam.
And I surrender you to no one else, my mother, Bosnia, my love.
To the Western ear, they do sound a bit strange when you first hear them. But so I think Yusuf kind of picked up on that and realized that actually making a record like this was more just to raise awareness.
And Yusuf didn't stop with the record. On November 15, 1997, he drew world attention to the plight of the Bosnian people by stepping onto a Sarajevo stage. That night, in front of 10,000 survivors, he celebrated the spirit of their culture by giving his first live performance in nearly 2 decades.
Habib Allah, Nabi Allah, Shafi Allah.
Facing an audience again after 17 years wasn't particularly easy, but at the same time, because I had this wonderful support of people whose spirits were so strong and so vital, it lifted me.
It's so quiet in the ruins.